We often do not have a choice but to deal with Windows 11. And if you are watching this video right now, you are probably someone who has already decided that Windows alone is not enough. Maybe you are tired of Windows doing whatever it wants on your own machine, or you just want the freedom that Linux gives you. Whatever your reason is, I completely understand that. So this video is not just about how to install Linux on Windows 11. This is about how to install it correctly, how to protect it, and how to keep Microsoft away from what it does not own. Stay right there. Before we get into the technical details, if you find this guide useful, please hit the like button and subscribe to Tech Reporter. We publish accurate and complete tech guides every single week, and it genuinely helps us reach more people who need this kind of information. Now let us get into it. The very first thing you need to do before touching anything related to Linux is prepare Windows 11 properly. Most people skip this part entirely, and that is exactly why their dual boot setup fails within weeks. So open your Windows settings, go to Privacy and Security, and find Device Encryption or BitLocker Drive Encryption. Make sure it is completely turned off. If BitLocker is currently active, you need to wait for the drive to fully decrypt before moving forward. This can take anywhere from 30 minutes to a few hours, depending on how much data is on your drive. Do not rush this step. BitLocker ties your encryption keys directly to the Windows boot configuration, so the moment Linux touches the boot partition, BitLocker will treat it as a security breach and lock your entire Windows drive. Everything on it becomes inaccessible. Turn it off and wait for it to finish completely. Once that is done, you need to disable Secure Boot from your BIOS. Restart your machine and press the key that opens your BIOS settings during startup. On most computers, this is F2, F10, F12, or delete. If you are not sure which key your machine uses, just search your computer model online and it will tell you immediately. Once you are inside the BIOS, navigate to the Security or Boot section, find Secure Boot, and set it to disabled. Save your changes and let the machine restart. Some tutorials will tell you that Ubuntu can be installed with Secure Boot enabled, and that is technically true in some situations. But the backup utility we are going to use, called Clonezilla, which is the most important tool in this entire process, will not boot with Secure Boot active. Without Clonezilla, you have no reliable way to recover your Linux installation when Windows eventually overwrites it. So disable Secure Boot and move on. The next thing to disable is Fast Startup. Open Control Panel, go to Power Options, click Choose what the power buttons do, and uncheck the box that says Turn on Fast Startup. Fast Startup is a Windows feature that never fully shuts down your machine. Instead, it saves the system state to a file and reloads from it on the next boot. The problem is that Linux sees this as Windows never properly closing its file systems. Any partition that Windows touched with Fast Startup enabled will appear as corrupted or read-only from Linux, and your shared data partition will become completely inaccessible. Disable it now before it becomes a problem later. Now with all three of those settings handled, we can move into the partition setup. Press the Windows key, type Disk Management, and open Create and Format Hard Disk Partitions. You will see your current drive layout on screen. There will be a small EFI system partition of around 100 to 300 megabytes, a tiny Microsoft reserved partition, your main Windows C drive taking up most of the space, and possibly a Windows recovery partition at the end. What we need to do here is carve out space for Linux and for a shared data partition that both operating systems can access. Right-click on your main Windows C drive partition and select Shrink Volume. In the Shrink Amount field, enter enough to bring Windows down to around 128 gigabytes. So if your Windows partition is currently 500 gigabytes, you would shrink it by approximately 370 gigabytes worth of space. After the shrink completes, you will see a block of unallocated space appear on the right side of your drive. Right-click that unallocated space and create a new simple volume. Allocate around 200 to 244 gigabytes of that space for your shared data partition, format it as NTFS, and assign it the drive letter D. Label it Data or Shared so you can identify it easily. This is where you will store everything important, your documents, projects, downloads, and any files you want to access from both Windows and Linux. The NTFS format here is not a preference, it is a requirement. Windows recognizes NTFS as its own format and will leave it alone even if you reinstall Windows later. Any other format, and Windows may overwrite that partition without warning. Leave whatever unallocated space remains after the shared partition completely raw and untouched. Do not create a partition there. Ubuntu's installer will handle that space correctly on its own. Before we install a single line of Linux, we need to back up the EFI system partition right now. This small partition is where all the boot magic happens, and it is also exactly what Windows will destroy when it decides to reclaim control of your machine. Boot from your Clonezilla Live USB by restarting and pressing F12 during startup to access the boot menu. If Windows blocks that access, go to Settings, System, Recovery, Advanced Startup, click Restart Now, and then select Use a Device, and choose your Clonezilla USB from the list. Once Clonezilla loads, select Device.image mode, point it at your external USB drive as the destination, and select the EFI system partition as the source. The backup will finish in under 2 minutes because the partition is tiny. Label it clearly as Windows Only Pre-Linux Installation and keep it safe. This is your escape hatch back to a clean Windows system if anything goes wrong. Now we are ready to install Linux. Restart your machine and boot from your Ubuntu Live USB using the same boot menu method. The Ubuntu Live environment will load and you will see an option to install Ubuntu. Click it and work through the initial screen selecting your language, keyboard layout, and whether you want to connect to a network during installation. When you reach the screen asking about the installation type, you will see several options, and this is the most important decision in the entire process. Select Manual Installation. Do not select Install Ubuntu alongside Windows Boot Manager, and absolutely do not select Erase Disk and Install Ubuntu. The automatic options make assumptions about your drive that can conflict with everything you have carefully set up. Manual installation keeps you in complete control of what happens to each partition. Inside the manual partition screen, you will see every partition on your drive listed with device names like NVMe 0, N1, P1, and NVMe 0, N1, P2. At the bottom of this screen, there is a drop-down labeled Bootloader Installation. Click that drop-down and select the main drive device, which will typically appear as NVMe 0, N1 or SDA, depending on your hardware type. Make sure you are selecting the entire drive and not a specific numbered partition. This tells Ubuntu exactly where to install GRUB so it appears correctly at startup. Next, find the unallocated space in the partition list, click the plus button to create a new partition, set the file system to ext4, set the mount point to /, which represents the root of your Linux installation, and give it all the remaining unallocated space. That is all you need to configure manually. Two things you must leave completely alone in this screen. First, do not touch the EFI system partition. Ubuntu will detect it automatically and use it without any input from you. If you reformat it, you will destroy your Windows boot files along with everything else. Second, do not touch the Windows C drive, the Microsoft Reserve partition, or the Windows Recovery partition. The only partition you should be creating or modifying is the one in the unallocated space you prepared specifically for Linux. Review everything one final time. Confirm the bootloader is pointed at the main drive. The Linux partition is set to ext4 with the / mount point, and nothing existing has been modified. Click Install Now. Confirm the partition changes and let the installation run. It will take between 10 and 20 minutes depending on your hardware speed. When installation finishes, remove the Ubuntu USB drive and restart the machine. If everything went correctly, GRUB will appear on screen, showing you two options, Ubuntu and Windows Boot Manager. Select Ubuntu first and verify that Linux boots properly, that your shared NTFS data partition shows up in the file manager, and that your internet connection works. Then restart and select Windows Boot Manager to confirm Windows still boots normally and that the shared D drive appears in File Explorer. Both systems working means the installation is complete and successful. Now do not close the laptop and walk away just yet, because there is one more backup to take. Boot from your Clonezilla USB one final time and repeat the exact same backup process you did earlier. Back up the EFI system partition again and label this one Dual Boot Configured Post-Linux Installation. You now have two restore points sitting on your external drive. A Windows-only backup and a complete dual boot backup. The next time Windows pushes a major update and GRUB disappears, which will happen eventually, you simply boot Clonezilla, restore the dual boot backup, and your system is completely back to normal in under 3 minutes. That is your entire protection system, and it works every single time without fail. There are two small fixes to apply after installation that will save you ongoing frustration. The first is a time zone conflict that affects almost every dual boot setup. Windows stores the hardware clock as local time, while Linux stores it as UTC, and every time you switch between operating systems, your system clock will show the wrong time. Fix it permanently by opening a terminal in Linux and running this command: timedatectl set-local-rtc1 --adjust-system-clock. That single command tells Linux to read the hardware clock as local time and your clock will stay consistent across both systems from that point forward. The second fix relates to the shared NTFS partition, occasionally mounting as read-only in Linux after an unclean shutdown. If that happens, boot into Windows, right-click the D drive in File Explorer, go to Properties, click the Tools tab, and run error checking. Let Windows repair the partition, restart, and boot back into Linux. The partition will be fully accessible again. That is the complete process from start to finish. You have disabled the Windows features that interfere with Linux, created the correct partition layout, backed up your EFI partition before installation, installed Ubuntu with manual partition control, verified both systems boot correctly, created a post-installation backup, and applied the 2 fixes that keep everything running smoothly. The setup is done, the protection system is in place, and when Windows eventually tries to take back what it thinks belongs to it, you will be ready for it. If this video helped you, please hit the like button and subscribe to Tech Reporter for more complete and honest tech guides every week. Drop any questions about your specific setup in the comments below, and I will help you personally. See you in the next one.